whichever way they feel most comfortable with is okay, but you just gotta give them experience with different types of graphs.
Right. So if this comes up, you'll see it's the same map, and it'll probably be red when it comes up, and hopefully it comes up. If not, where it says data, you can actually pick different types of data. You can do population, you can do electoral votes, you can do anything like that, or the one we're doing today is letters in the states.
Or you can come back.
Yeah, we can go back to that. No, I guess we don't have that. Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, we would check our answers with this, and then we're going to focus together as a class on one set of data. And so we pick the first 10 just to make it easy. And then we will create a bar graph as a class. So who can tell me how many letters are in Alabama? I know it's really small on the 7. Right, so there's 7 on there, and then we would keep asking and getting the answers, and the kids can come up and actually draw it themselves. And we would have our bar graph, and here we can ask again, can you tell out of these states which state has the most letters? Yes. And which has the fewest?
Good job.
Good job. And do you see is there anyone that maybe has the same number repeated?
Equal
number. Florida and Georgia. And Alabama. And Arizona. Yes. Okay, so this would be our bar graph representation of the data. And then here we would create a pictograph. And so let's do Alabama. We said it was 7. And then we'll go quick. And we would go through all of them. So the kids would actually come up, or we would do the answers and write it up on here. And
Go back, sorry.
And again, we would ask them from here, can you tell which one has the most, which one has the fewest, which is the longest, and then we would compare the two. And we would ask, why is it important to graphically represent your data? And what?
Why is it important? Instead of just looking at the names and
Instead of looking at the big map,
why is it important that we organize our information this
Yeah,
way?
you can see it more easily.
Exactly. And so then we would also ask for them to compare, how are the two graphs similar? How are they different?
And ask them which graph is better.
Which graph
of course,
is better.
there's no wrong answer, so they just have to be able to back up their answer with reasons.
Right. And then, so that would be that. So then we're just going to summarize our during would be like, now that we know all the 50 states, who has the most and who has the least, and the length of the names, we want to find out how many times each letter is used in all 50 states. So we ask them to make predictions, which letter do they think is the most used.
Let us do it. Let them do it.
Let them do it?
Yeah.
Oh, which letter do you think is the most used? I don't really know the answer to that right now, but
Yeah.
A.
For census A.
So then they would actually fill in this sheet. They would get the sheet. And again, we would want them to make sure that they're counting, so maybe they're crossing out or anything like that. And then they're doing tallies to show. And then right after each group, the 5 groups would create 2 graphs, and they have the choice which graph they want to use for which set of data. So one of them has to be for activity 1, and one of them is for activity 2. And so once they're done there, the after would be they share the graphs with the class, they show both sets, and they have to justify their reasoning. Why did they choose, the bar graph for the frequency, and why did they choose the pictograph for the length of the states, or whichever they chose. And that's pretty much it for activity. Then we go to assessment.
And different ways of assessing not only this lesson but other lessons is the way they collect the data, like we said with the tally marks. The younger students are going to go around and are going to either tally, or they might actually draw pictures. If you're having them look around the room and count how many pencils there are, they might actually draw pictures of pencils. Some of them might do tallies, and then you can talk about, why they did that, which is part of the data analysis and classification. Why would you go around drawing pencils? Is that easier or quicker than doing tally marks? And then they can learn which is the best method. And then data analysis of the graphical representation, when we count up all those pencils, so to speak, how can we show that in a chart? And then when we put it up in the chart, what does that chart mean? And that's what interpreting results is. And like I said earlier, the focus isn't on creating the graph itself. It's about collecting the data, and it's about reading the graph, being able to make predictions from it. Most of the time when we make graphs, we either already have it, like we hand them out with the graph already made, or there's a ton of stuff online where you can actually create a graph just by plugging in the information, which is also great. And there's one actually on the Illuminations website that I've used before. So during our presentation today, we talked about the New York State standards for probability and statistics. You guys learned why we study it, why it's important in the elementary level, because it's the foundation to build on for the following years. And because it's in our everyday lives, it's in the weather we talk about every day, it's in the school, college you chose to go to, and the student loans, it's going to be in the taxes you pay, it's everywhere. We gave you a couple great activities for teaching your students, with counting letters for the various states. And what's great with probability and statistics is that you can use so many different subjects. Social studies and reading are probably the biggest ones, and you can cross over into different subject areas. And we gave you a couple ideas for assessment, what you should be focusing on for your lessons when you teach probability and statistics. So, thank you for your attention today.